This program was brought to you by Koller Institute of Venture at Tel Aviv University.
Venture is a fascinating topic, but it's a big topic. We cannot just research venture. The way we attack the issue is by defining a particular perspective. The first one was policy, the second one was history of venture, a third one was deep innovation. We are now dealing what we call university venture, which asks the question, what is the relationship between university and the venture world? Which leads me to the topic of our discussion today. And allow me to frame the issue, and from this framing you will see why we designed the day as we designed it. What is the challenge? The challenge is very simple. Each academic institution has three goals. Very simple. Research, education, and impact. Research is about creating new knowledge. Education is about transferring the knowledge to the next generation. And impact is about using this knowledge for a positive change in society. Each organization has a different distribution of energy on these missions. This is not my research data, but sort of my estimation. I estimate that in Tel Aviv University, we spend 40% of our energy doing new research, 40% of our energy doing education, and maybe 20% thinking about impact. If you are the Weizmann Institute, that ratio is very different. They spend 80% of the time doing research. They don't care so much about education. And frankly, they don't care so much about impact. If you look at a simple college or something that is not a research education center, they do very little research. They spend most of their time in education, and of course their impact is not a target. Every institution needs to decide what is the right ratio for them. It is very difficult to act unless you know what is the ratio that is good for you. The question is therefore, what is the relationship between venture and the university, but more specifically, what is the relationship between venture and the three different goals of the university? And that question does not have one answer. It depends on the institution. The major problem that I see is listed in this slide. Frankly, in many areas of endeavor, if you want to do research, a university is not the place to do it anymore. It is much more efficient, both as a career scientist as well as an industry, to do research somewhere else. University is not a very efficient place when it comes to research. Education is perhaps an even bigger problem, because many universities are not very efficient when it comes to education. The structure, when you sit in a classroom and you have 100 or 200 students, is replaced very easily with other systems that are being done in a much more efficient way. There's no money to do the good education that involves mentorship. So if there's no money, what are we doing it? What is the difference between 200 people in this classroom and a lecture over video? Many of the lectures in Israel, in the Technion, for example, are done over video. People do not even bother coming to class because, again, the best lecture is already on video. And we're not talking about Coursera or anything sophisticated like that. We're talking pure video. Last but not least is the matter of impact. And I want to be a little bit provocative here. If I'm a taxpayer, shall I use my money, my pure dollars, precious dollars, to give to the university? To do what exactly? To educate people that will then create startups that will then leave the country? Because that's what happens today. You educate innovators, they're very good. Sequoia comes in, pays them $1 million, and that's it. They move to San Francisco. So as a taxpayer, I have a serious question. And again, I'm not talking about the Israeli context. I'm talking, for example, about the Hong Kong context, which I'm very familiar with. And this is exactly the problem they have. There are voices inside the Legislative Council that are asking exactly that question. Why we are spending money on the universities, educating people that are creating companies that are moving out of the country to China. This is a serious question. It's a serious question from both directions, both from the direction of the university and its future, but also from the venture point of view and its future, because venture people are asking themselves exactly the same question. How can we work with the universities? We had a preliminary discussion with Broadcom here that is actually interested and wants to work with the university and are facing some very interesting opportunities and, I would say, challenges. The venture ecosystem itself is being attacked in a major way because it is changing. I'm not going to go over all the details, but just to give you the context. If you are a region, say Israel or Hong Kong or Sweden, etc., when you come up with your strategy to develop the ecosystem of your own country, you analyze the external forces, you analyze the internal capabilities. This is a sample from an analysis I did for Hong Kong. And then you have things that you can do. In fact, we documented these in a paper that came out last year, which is called 44 Measures That Government Can Do. Within these 44 measures, 44 tools, actually few of them relate directly to universities and academia. The venture ecosystem that we talked earlier has its own process. This is what is happening in each of the different steps. Again, I'm not going to delve into the details. The purpose here is to tell you how it is changing. And I'm just going to give you a few examples. These are the forces that are changing the system. Force number one, which I would like to talk to you about, is the force that I was, Shmuel, where are you? Very good. Was introduced to by Dr. Shmuel Or, one of the most prolific inventors in Israel. He sits, by the way, near the Chief Patents Officer of Israel, so they can communicate with each other. And Shmuel was courageous enough to introduce me to an interesting endeavor, which is called intellectual ventures. Intellectual ventures, in many ways, is the future university. They don't have any students, and they are not dealing with any impact. They are just dealing with ideas. They generate ideas. It's a factory to generate ideas. They have 4,000 people, inventors. I wouldn't call myself an inventor, but Shmuel is an inventor. I'm a tiny inventor. And they generate a call. Every month, you get a call from them. Here's an interesting problem. What do you think will solve it? Here's another interesting problem. They have crazy problems. A couple of years ago, we got a problem, said hip replacement is going to be a $21 billion market in the US. The current price of a hip is $25,000. Come up with an idea to make it cheaper. Couldn't do anything about that. Then they had another idea. Bamboo trees goes 10 centimeters a week. We think with genetic engineering, it can grow 10 meters a week. Design seeds that build houses. Okay, I didn't know about that too. But then Shmuel and I got a RFI that basically said something like that. You know, many of us have phones, right? All of us have phones. But there are very few applications that actually take the fact that we are all in the same room with phones and create an application out of it. Shmuel calls me up, said, Yesha, that's an interesting question. How about if we drink some coffees and some other liquids to make sure we come up with good ideas? This is actually a true story because we really sat down. Where did we sit? You remember? Top floor of one of the hotels in Israel for a whole day, and we came up with ideas. And then we came up with an interesting idea. The idea goes like this. If you have phones here and something happens outside, and CNN wants to cover that, CNN does not have a news reporter team right here. How about if CNN will call you up and invite you to be a temporary member of a virtual news team? They would call you up and say, do you want to be a virtual news team member? And if you say yes, they will tell you through the GPS where to go, pick up your phone, through the earphones will tell you where to go, and 5 phones will transmit to the headquarters of CNN that story. The result? A virtual news team. Is that a nice idea? It's a great idea. Why it's a great idea? Because 3 weeks later, we got an email from Intellectual Ventures. Thank you very much for your idea. $15,000 were deposited in your account. That's it. It was actually 3 paragraphs that we have sent them out. About a year later, this came out. This is the official patent. Yesha Sivan over there, Shmuel Or over there too, and some of our friends. And this is the patent. By the way, we didn't do that at all. They have outsourcing in India that is doing this. It became a 15-page document, which is an unbelievable description. Shmuel and I did not even recognize that we invented that. Bottom line, it's a remotely controlled crowdsourced media. That's the patent. Now imagine the impact of this on the nature of innovation. From a point of view of an inventor, a scientist, a technologist, an engineer, I don't need to bother with the VCs anymore. I just come up with the ideas and get money from somebody. I don't care about you guys. Anyhow, if I start a company at the end, I'm going to get 2%, right, Sami? So what's the point of working? On the other hand, if I'm a company or if I'm a VC, why do I need innovators? I go to the shelf of Intellectual Ventures and I pick up whatever is interesting and I create a company based on that idea. This is a complete new way of how innovation is being created. Where are we as a university in this situation? In this new market of ideas? One example. Another very important example is what I call the rise of innovation platforms. And I think we already heard some hints about that. Innovation today is no longer sit in the lab and come up with one thing. It has to do with the ecosystem. And perhaps the most efficient ecosystem today is what we have in the digital side of things. Digital is changing everything because digital is the most mature industry in the world today, much more than any other industry. Because digital has so many subsystems and components that are helping innovation that is no wonder that all the money goes into IT and cyber, etc. Because this is the best chance to succeed. By the way, this slide is the reason why we started Deep Innovation, because the question is how to create these infrastructures in other areas. Digital is completely changing innovation. The innovation of Waze, for example, is a very small innovation, but it sits on top of many, many other innovations. GPS, 4G, the fact that people are willing to give their data, cloud computing, big screens, telephone, smartphone, all this is an infrastructure, and basically Waze just captured the top on top of it. This is changing the way innovation is being done. Now, this is especially critical for universities because the idea that you can come up with a patent and get a percentage of X is ridiculous when you come to information technology. It doesn't happen that way. You start up with an idea and it emerges into something else because you are building, you are just a component, and a company is really building this ecosystem of ideas. I can go on describing the many pressures. Again, the whole thing, for example, of Kickstarter. A very, very interesting example of how innovation is now being funded and solving the number one problem of innovation. You have clients before you have a product. It is no wonder that a company like Oculus Rift got to the value of $2 billion because they were able to compress the value from an idea to a product because they already had the clients before they had the product. This is a big change. In the article, I make a distinction between what I call the current trends, next 3-5 years, and the ongoing trends, which I foresee for the next century. And I foresee the next century as being messy, fast, and global. What do I mean by that? This is the one example that I want to give you about value creation in the world. This is a comparative analysis of how much time it took companies to reach the value of $150 billion in the stock exchange. You see in the top here, Motorola 11 years, and Intel 27 years, and Cisco 9 years, etc., etc. And then you see Google over here, 3 years, and then you see Apple 27 years. But of course you see the blue line. The blue line is Facebook. It took Facebook 1.5 years to reach the value of almost $150 million. This chart is from last year. The value of Facebook today is $300 billion. This is changing the way, again, think of it not from a university point of view, from a finance point of view, from a venture point of view. That is the reason why Facebook was not ashamed to pay $19 billion for WhatsApp. $19 billion for WhatsApp. At the time, it was 10% of the net worth of Facebook. He was eager enough to make sure that he has that because he knew that if something like WhatsApp would go into the market, it would become a much bigger company faster. So he prevented that by simply buying them. What does it mean for universities, all these changes? This is the quote that our president used to show you that Tel Aviv University is in a good place. In fact, I actually looked at that research in a more careful detail. And of course, statistics is a very confusing matter. This actually research does not say anything about anything. Because all of these things are not even comparable with each other. How can you compare Tel Aviv University over here with the likes of Harvard or Stanford? It is simply impossible. In fact, we are much more successful than them in terms of capital. Another data point which I wanted to share with you is what is happening in the UK in the last couple of years. I think the UK is the most advanced place in terms of policy of managing innovation from universities today. They have very interesting ways, very unique ways, different ways to capitalize on the knowledge that is being created by the universities. The UK has very good universities, but historically they were not able to actually capitalize on that compared with the US. About 10 years ago, they decided to deal with that more carefully, and they came up with very interesting models. Two models that are quite interesting is the models of the group over there, which is a public company that has the right to basically commercialize knowledge from some of the universities. And then another interesting, in another place out of Cambridge, a small university outside of London, of course, is the tremendous value they give faculty members if they are successful to actually come up with innovation. It's becoming a big deal. Another data point has to do with patents. As we have seen earlier, patents themselves are completely changing. In fact, let me say it bluntly, TTOs, especially in Israel, but also in other places, are a little bit fascinated with patents. And that whole system of patents is not very effective in modern innovation. We really have to pay attention to that. 1 minute, very good. I have 5 more points and 2 more, so exactly like my president. Data point number 4 is why exactly we are doing what we are doing. What is the purpose? Is our purpose to create new knowledge? Is our purpose to create new jobs? From a taxpayer point of view, that's my purpose, because I'm not interested in pure knowledge. Is it money? Or maybe it's to fix the world. Each goal has a different plan, and even a combination of goals has a different plan. Last but not least is the rise of the academic entrepreneur. There are some interesting writings today about a new kind of academician, ones that put the impact first and new knowledge later. This is an important point, but do we build our system in such a way that facilitate that? Here are my 5 very, I would say, initial insights. And let me say one more thing about insights. My goal today, our goal today, is to generate these insights. My goal is to get 100 insights like that, from which we will choose 10 to develop into a more detailed analysis. Number 1, we have to invest more energy to think about this issue, because it's clear to me that what we have now is not working. Number 2 is we have to consider the impact and the right mix of venture when it comes to research, education, and impact. It depends on different percentages that we allocate, but it is clear, and from my discussions with our president, I know it's top on his agenda, to see how venture affects these 3 missions. Of course, and we had the director talking about that directly, we have to consider the context. Israel is different than the US, different than Germany, different than China. What is important and what is clear to me, mostly from the work that I've done in China, is that whatever we decide, we have to be very clear about it, and we have to be gamble. We have to gamble on particular things. We cannot do everything. If we try to do everything, we do nothing. We have to make that decision. If we're able to decide on X, Y, and Z, few key points, then there's a chance that we will actually create impact. And last but not least, venture has to be an integral part of the strategy of a university. One strategy could say we completely ignore that and we continue to do X, Y, and Z, and that's fine. But lack of clarity when it comes to venture is actually causing confusion and wasted resources. I hope I've been provocative enough. I would like to thank you for your attention and wish us all a very productive day.
This program was brought to you by Koller Institute of Venture at Tel Aviv University.